Hey, Balanced and Fruitful people, welcome to another Education Mondays here with Genesis Solutions and Consulting. I am Justine Kelly with Genesis Solutions, where we provide therapeutic tools for balanced living. And today on this episode of Education Mondays, I want to offer to you a free mini e-course about emotional maturity. So the clients that I work with really have a hard time with being balanced in their thought life, their emotion regulation, and their behaviors. And so the work that I do is really geared towards giving educational tools and then also practical knowledge about how to apply those resources and tools so that they can implement them in their own life so that they can see changes in their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. We have 4 specific clients that we are working with, and there is a link up above and in the description to get more insight into the depth of who those 4 clients are. But essentially, they struggle with anxiety, depression, identity formation, and spiritual maturity. So with the systematic process that Genesis Solutions takes with different therapy approaches and tools, I'm going to share with you those insights into how we do our work with clients, so that if you are consistent with some of those behavioral patterns of our 4 main clients, then these resources and knowledge and information about mental health can be really applicable to you and your life so that you can grow into your spiritual, mental, and emotional health. All right, let's dive into these slides. Okay, so let's look at some of the things that we'll talk about today in this free kind of intro course to emotional maturity, and what will be some of the things that you would need to know about emotions so that you can grow in your understanding of their function and how it can help you to be more consistent in your everyday life. So I'm going to share a little bit more about Genesis Solutions, the types of clients that we serve. I'm going to give you the definition of what emotional maturity is, what the functions of emotions are, and then also giving you some insight to what even are emotions. Let's start with that. Let's be able to identify what emotions are and then talk a little bit about the function of emotions, some of the therapy techniques that I use with clients, and then really help us to look at what values emotions can give to us. Even though they may seem to be daunting, overwhelming, too much at times, they definitely serve a purpose and they have a function. So we want to share that with you. And then at the end, I'll share some ways that you can stay connected with us if you find that these resources in the process of therapy that Genesis offers is really hitting home for you, so that you can just stay connected with us so that we can help you to be more balanced and fruitful in how you live. So, who do we serve? As I said in the beginning, Genesis Solutions is really focused on 4 types of clients. And I have a whole other video, again, that is available for you to look through. But kind of at the crux of what they struggle with is anxiety, mild to moderate depression, identity formation, emotional regulation, and spiritual maturity. So, these are clients who are often on the extremes of life. One minute they are excited, something unpredictable happens or changes, and then they kind of go into the spirals where they have mental spirals where they can't get out of a particular thought process or an emotion, and so they just feel stuck. And one of the big things I do help my clients with is helping them to think differently so that they can be able to maneuver and pivot and be in this balance between acceptance and change. So you will hear a lot about certain keywords and phrases that I use with my clients. For those who are clients, one of the key things I do mention a lot is breathing and stillness, because it helps us to be able to regulate our emotions a little bit better, and understanding why we need to take those moments to pause before we make a decision. Emotional maturity, what is it? Let's use this working definition to define it. Emotional maturity is the ability to identify, regulate, and express emotions to improve or maintain the dignity of self and others. And this is a really broad definition, and I want it to be inclusive of so many different things, because emotional maturity is not just one single moment in life, it's a lifelong process. And it is going to help with your ability to improve and or maintain your dignity as well as the dignity of others. if our emotional growth does not include the awareness of other people, and it's just inward focus, then we've missed some component of that emotional maturation. And so I want to be able to help remind clients and then also myself that emotional maturity involves how we help other people as well as how we help ourselves to become our best self, rooted in truth and love and other aspects and values that are important to you. So that is the working definition that I give and work by to help clients to mature. All right, what are emotions? Here is the definition of emotions that is coming from the American Psychological Association, which is a really great resource for us in the counseling and psychology mental health field. But it's kind of a working definition also that I think can be broken down to help clients digest it a little bit better. So emotions are reaction patterns that are brief, involuntary, and physiological that helps us to interact with the world. Essentially, emotions are hardwired into our brains to help us be able to survive. We need them in order to keep us safe and to help us, again, maintain those relationships with other people and also help us to be consistent with who we are and what we are experiencing as we move through the world. So, this is emotions. This is what the definition of emotions are and how they help us. Emotions are going to be experienced as a whole body experience. Whenever there's something going on the outside of us, then there's going to be a response internally with our brains. There's different circuits and parts of the brain that's going to talk to different muscles, different organs to prepare the body to respond because it's been, again, hardwired and developed into our brains to help us to have an appropriate interaction with the world. Because if we don't have those emotions, it's going to be really difficult for us to be able to navigate through a world that's constantly moving and changing, and ebbing and flowing. So let's take this example. Let's say you're walking down the street and out of nowhere, for whatever reason, there's a lion charging down the street. Don't know where the lion came from, but your emotion of fear, which is an innate emotional response, is going to respond immediately to either run, fight it off, or freeze up. Or it may do a little combination of all three, but it's going to do one of those three things because it is your brain has appraised, meaning it's assessed how important this thing is and what you need to do to respond to it. So without you really being too deep in thought about what to do, your brain and your body has already begun to respond to it by pumping more blood to your heart, to your extremities, so that you can make a decision to keep yourself safe. So, although fear for some people can be crippling, um, fear and anxiety is a little different, and I'll talk about that in a later video. But fear is an immediate and imminent response to an immediate and imminent threat. Um, so that's where the brief portion comes in. Once that lion goes away, however it goes away, then your brain says, okay, I can no longer see it with my eyes, hear it with my ears, touch it, or smell it. And so now your body can go back to this rest and digest mode, which is your parasympathetic system kicks in, and then it is able to go into relax mode and then go on throughout your day, but you'll just have an interesting story later on in life, but you will be able to go about the rest of your day not being in fear because the threat is no longer with you anymore. Anxiety is a feeling which is different from fear. Anxiety is going to think about what would happen in the future and prepare for potentially another lion coming out into the street. And so you don't want to have that experience again. So your mind says, hey, I'm never going to go back outside because I don't know when and where a lion may come out. So anxiety is more so focused on the propensity of what could be in the future versus fear is responding to something that is imminent, immediate in the moment. And your body is responding to how to navigate through that imminent and immediate process right then and there in the moment. So that is kind of the difference between emotions and feelings. Feelings are going to be brief, they're going to be involuntary, and they are physiological. Okay, so let's look at the function of emotions. What do they do? How do they help us? And why do we even have them? Sometimes my clients are just like, listen, emotions are ridiculous. They're unnecessary. They're too much. And I'm like, hey, I get it. I feel you. They can be a lot to navigate through, especially if we don't really understand the value or function of them. They may just seem like they're just pointless and get in the way of doing things. But there are three specific functions of emotions. The first one is to communicate to others. The second is to communicate to self. And then the third, it helps us to move or it promotes action. So, whenever we're thinking about emotions, they are going to do those three things. And we really have to check in with how our emotions are going to play a part in each of those things, especially when we're looking at cycles of repetitive behaviors. We want to be able to say, well, okay, what are the emotions that I feel right before I do this thing that I don't want to do? We have to look at, well, what are you going through emotionally in that moment? And that emotion is also connected to a belief. So we have to look at all of those three things to help us to really see if we are stuck in a cycle that we can really get ourselves stuck out of just based off of being aware of our emotions. Okay, so those are the three functions of emotions: communicate to others, communicate to self, and to promote action. So I'll break these down a little bit and look at each of these functions. So the first one is communicating to others. How do we say how we feel when there is no words being used? So there's three ways that our emotions are communicated or expressed in the physiological sense. One, body language. You can express exactly how you feel emotionally and what's going on based off of your eye contact, your proximity, your speech, your facial expressions. There's another video that I gave about action tendencies and some six universal emotions, and I kind of gave some examples of that. But here you can see that these pictures are really expressing a particular emotion. And the reason why our face needs to and our body language needs to express these emotions because that's giving someone else some information to how they are to respond to us. So if I make a face like that's communicating something that, hey, either you're disgusted with something around me or I'm maybe even disgusted at the person. And so that's going to probably communicate to the other person, okay, wait, this may not be the best time to maybe approach her. This may not be something that I want to even get into with her. So that is going to express to the other person that, hey, something is uncomfortable with me and I really probably need some space. Also, being aware of your speech and your tone. So, when we are upset, sometimes we can have certain word choices that can let other people know that, okay, she need a minute, or hey, she wants me to come close. Even just now with my voice changing, when I wanted to say, hey, come close, I want you here, I want to be with you, my voice and tone went up, the volume went up. So, those are some ways that our physiological bodies will express the inward emotions that are going on. I want to also point out that sometimes for different people and different clients who have different neurological disorders or just divergent ways of thinking, that is absolutely okay. Some of these expressions may not be able to be expressed or received in the typical way. We just have to find some different ways to interact with them so that we can still stay in community and connection with them. All right, the next one is again remembering emotions communicate to self. So here are three things that we can think about when we're trying to figure out, well, what's going on? What are my emotions saying? So one is to pay attention to your internal physical responses. Is your heart racing? Are you breathing heavily? Did your breathing patterns change? Are you sweating? And if you're not a sweater and you start to sweat for some reason, maybe you're having a particular emotional response that is requiring you to pay attention. Second is internal thoughts. So, this is something I tell my clients a lot. Hey, what are you thinking? What's the belief behind whatever emotion that came up? And so sometimes we have to take a pause and ask ourselves, what I'm feeling. Um, I'm feeling I don't know, maybe sad, and asking the question, okay, well, what are you thinking about? What's the thing that happened, and what was the way that you interpreted to bring about that sad emotion? And then body movement, paying attention to your own body movements. If you are fidgeting, if you are, kind of tapping things, or if your body language is kind of hunched over like this, all of that is pointing to some type of indication of an emotional experience that you're having. And we have to be aware of those emotions communicating to ourselves, because our internal world is trying to say, hey, pay attention, something is happening and I need you to focus in to help me get through this. So these are some ways that our bodies talk to us and our emotions talk to us so that we can listen. Okay. Number three, the last one is actions that influence our emotions, or emotions that promote actions. So, whenever we're doing something, our emotions are going to impact us in our relationships, our health, our career. They're going to they're going to move us towards some type of action. If I am excited, I'm going to pull you closer. If I'm afraid, I may push you away. If I'm uh, what's another emotion we can think of? Angry, right? There's going to be some level of action behind each of those emotions, because that's what they do. They help us to respond in a way, so that that need of that emotion is met, and is being able to be released in in a healthy and specific way. So thinking about, we'll talk about this a little later too, but thinking about those emotions that we just talked about, maybe some fears, some sadness, or even joy, how do you respond to those? And what do you normally do? Okay, so let's do this. Let's jump into some emotional awareness. If you have seen Inside Out or my previous video about these 6 universal emotions, you have a leg up in identifying the 6 universal emotions theory. So let's look at these faces to see if you can guess them. So we have 6 emotions, and I want to see if you're able to guess them and just be able to say, this person may look angry, this person may look sad. And again, they're not saying anything at all. We cannot hear them, but their facial expressions are expressing and communicating how they feel emotionally and what's going on the inside. So let's see if you got the 6. Enjoyment or joy would be the first one. Anger, fear, sadness, disgust, and surprise. These are the 6 universal emotions that each of us have, and that they are hardwired into our brains and bodies, again, to help us to interact with the world. If we don't know these 6 basic emotions, it's going to be really hard for us to be aware of how much they drive our behaviors and cycles of behaviors that are helpful or unhelpful, because everything that we do is coming from one of these or more of these basic or primary emotions. So, to be able to grow into your most mature self emotionally, you will need to know what these 6 basic emotions are and how they impact what you do. And that is called action tendencies. Action tendencies, according to, again, to the APA, the American Psychological Association, It is an urge to carry out certain expressive or instrumental behaviors that is linked to a specific emotion. In layman's term, each emotion is going to have a particular way that it behaves. And so that those emotions, again, are hardwired, but some of those behavioral responses may be unlearned or learned. If you are around children at any time, if they are happy, they do something that makes them happy. They may laugh, they may giggle, they may hug. If they are angry, they may push and they may shout, they may stomp, because all of that is communicating something that is consistent with the emotion that they have experienced. For us as adults, unfortunately, sometimes our emotions and our behaviors can be inconsistent. For example, if I'm angry and I give somebody a hug, that's a little confusing for people. If I am saying that I am sad, but I'm smiling, again, I'm a little concerned for my clients who often do that when they talk about something that is really sad or hurtful and they're smiling. I take a moment to ask them, "Hey, I'm noticing something is really inconsistent here. You're saying something that's deeply hurtful and sad, but you're smiling. Help me to understand what you're trying to communicate. Something either the emotion that you've identified is incorrect or how you are expressing it is inconsistent and incongruent, and we need to find a way to help you to be okay with expressing the typical way that that emotion uh, usually is expressed." Again, not every person is going to express sadness in the same way, but smiling and sadness usually doesn't go hand in hand unless you have been able to go through some process of being able to grieve and then say, "Hey, even though this thing was hurtful, I'm still going to smile through it." But really being able to give people a chance to have that uncomfortable experience that comes with some levels of sadness, without having to smile over it, because sometimes our clients would do that because it's uncomfortable for them to maybe express that emotion because it wasn't welcomed in their environment or family. So here is a chart that I've developed, and it is looking at each emotion, the action that it typically does, what it's trying to communicate, and the desired need. I'll give you a moment to look this over. Now, although I want to note that shame wasn't a part of the six universal emotions, it is a really good emotion to note. Shame and guilt, although they're a little different, those two can go hand in hand with how they maybe express themselves. But I do want to give space to that emotion because that feeling and emotion comes up a lot with clients when I'm helping them navigate through some of their thought process, emotions, and behaviors that stems from that emotion and feeling of shame or guilt. So this will be available for you in the description. It's a free resource for you so that you can look over it. And there will also be a other video associated with this video that can help you to really flesh out the action tendencies that you do so that you can be aware of what you do, how you express that emotion, and the desired need that you're trying to get met when you have a particular emotion. Okay, we're almost finished. So, we're going to talk about the value of emotions. And this is where the work that I really do with Genesis really comes to life and helping clients to really understand the value of them. They have such a significant impact on how we move throughout life. And so I want to be able to share with you and with my clients the value of emotions and the three things that it helps us to really bring forth and be aware of. So, first, it is helpful and valuable to us because they help us to explore and examine our belief systems. They help us to really understand what we're thinking and how we're thinking it, and possibly why we're thinking that way. And so it can also give us a moment to pause and say, okay, if I'm feeling the emotion of anger, okay, let's think about how you're thinking about the situation, how you've interpreted the situation that caused that emotion of anger, so we can really talk through it. And then number two, it also gives us an ability to help us look at how we need to respond. So if we are having that emotion of anger or experiencing that, what are you going to do with that emotion? Sometimes people don't even know their typical behavioral responses. They just do something, they maybe feel something in their body sensationally. And when they feel this feeling in their body, they're automatically going to do this particular thing because they're trying to get rid of the feeling or emotion. But sometimes we need to just take a moment to pause and say, is this going to be the wisest decision to make when I'm feeling this particular way, physically or emotionally? And then number three, they help us to become more spiritually mature. I really am grounded and rooted in the work that I do with Genesis Solutions in biblical principles and values. And so the clients that I do work with also echo that that is important to them as well. And so when I'm working with clients, I'm making sure that we talk about how consistent we need to be with those biblical values and how our emotional maturity can help us to get there. Here are the therapy techniques that I use. They are going to come from three main different therapy approaches. One is called cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy ACT. And here are some of the resources that you will have available and the tools that I use so that you can practice them on your own. The first one from CBT, it's called the cognitive model. It helps us to really look at our thought process and patterns because it's going to impact those emotions and those behaviors. The assumption behind this model is that unhealthy or maladaptive behaviors are a result of distorted thought processes about self, the world, and others. In order to change those emotions and behaviors, we have to really take note of how we're thinking about something. So let's use this example here. There is a guy, his name is Pharrell. He is walking down the street, minding his business, and then out of nowhere, a stranger comes up to him and kind of scowls at him or looks him up and down. And Pharrell's first thought was that Pharrell must have done something wrong in order for the guy to look at him or the girl to look at him the wrong way. So his thought was, I must have done something wrong. I'm so awkward. Pharrell's emotional experience from that belief, he's going to feel embarrassment and upset with himself because he's thinking that the person's behavior was a direct result of what he does or who he is. And so from that thought, he has those emotions of embarrassment and upset with himself. And then Pharrell then does this. His behavior is to apologize to the stranger, but plays the situation over and over in his head and tries to understand what he did wrong to make the guy do what he did or the girl do what he did. So you can see the thought process impacts the emotions and the behaviors. The description below or the process below with the thoughts, emotions, behavior shows how his whole mood, behavior, and emotions will change based off of a new thought. So when I'm working with clients, I'm asking them to give them a space and time to think about how their thoughts are impacting their moods, their emotions and behaviors. And so the work when I'm using this particular tool is helping clients to point out, is the thought process distorted, because that distortion is going to impact your emotions and behaviors also. The second approach that I use is called, again, dialectical behavioral therapy. And that is really great for so many different things. But the main thing I help clients utilize in this particular therapy approach is some emotional regulation skills and being able to have more healthy interactions with other people by teaching them how to be more emotionally effective in their communications with others. But this particular tool is called choosing the opposite action. And so when we have a particular emotion, again, we're going to have those action tendencies that makes us do certain things, or we have the urge to do certain things. But opposite action is pushing us and pulling us and causing us to be mature to do something opposite of what we want to do, especially if that behavior is unhealthy and ineffective. So, for this example here, the initial emotion may be anger, and the urge is to yell, to argue, to fight. But through some work, I'm coaching clients to say, hey, let's change the behavior completely so that you can have a different emotional response. And so if you're angry, the opposite action would be to whisper, to change your tone, to breathe, maybe not hug. You may not be at that place right now, but you can do something physical and non-threatening to someone else to help you be able to navigate through that. Okay? The next one that I use is coming from ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy. And I use this resource and this approach with clients to help them explore their values, because their values are going to help them to make more consistent decisions that are connected to their values. Whenever we do something inconsistent with the person that we want to become or our values, we experience some level of emotional suffering. So, have you ever had a situation where you're like, dang, I knew I should have did X, Y, and Z. I knew I shouldn't have said this to this person. I knew I should have just went with what I felt. Typically, that's an issue about your value. You did something inconsistent with who you want to become, and you didn't, really display yourself in the best way that you knew how to or that you wanted to. And so when we do that consistently, it causes us to feel some level of regret, feel some level of shame, some remorse, and having to go through that internal process of going over those decisions that we didn't make, that or decisions that we did make that wasn't consistent with our values, caused us to have these really, really intense moments of emotional suffering and pain. And sometimes when we don't know that the cause of that is coming from us not being connected to our values and having a deep relationship with them, and then we get stuck in that place of feeling sad, low, depressed. It can take a little while to get out of that, because we need some other resources and connections and community to keep us accountable. But with this research with ACT, it does show that we can help clients to become more consistent with making decisions that are consistent with the person that they become, by helping them to be more aware of why they are important, and helping them to develop the character and make action based decisions that are consistent with their values and not just performing. The last piece I do want to talk about before we end up in this Education Monday, I want to talk about spiritual maturity and how important it is in our emotional maturity. So, there is a great book that I have and recommend many people to read, and it's called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. It's by Peter Scazzaro, and he has this book, and it's really helpful for clients who are Christians and who follow Christ and really walk with Him and want to become more mature. But essentially, his thesis is it is impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining spiritually or emotionally immature. So this is the work that I do with clients. I want them to be emotionally mature so that they can be spiritually mature. It's impossible for us to reach that maturation in our spiritual life if we are ignoring some key things in our emotional world. And so he gives us 10 signs of unhealthy spirituality, ways that emotions can help us towards self discovery. And he talks about this journey through the wall that each of us are going to go through in life. And if we are not aware of the function of emotions, the purpose that they serve, the value that they have, most of us in our spiritual walk are going to get stuck at the place of the wall and not grow beyond it, because we haven't been able to really dive deep into the heart of the matter, the emotions behind it, and be willing to change some thought process, some emotions, so that we can reach our true purpose and image in Christ. So if you are interested, there is access to this book, I'll also leave that in the description so that you can learn a little bit more and see if any of those 10 signs of emotionally unhealthy spirituality fits where you are. And so thank you so much for being able to just kind of sit through this free course. I wanted to give you a little intro to some of the work that we do, some of the resources and techniques and tools that I use for my specific clients, and seeing if that could be a resource or help for you. Again, you will have these timestamps available if you want to kind of go through certain sections, and you'll also have those resources available for you in the description. But here again is the heart behind why I wanted to share this with you all on this Education Monday. It is important that we know what emotions are because they help us to become more emotionally mature. They also are going to help us to identify our core beliefs. It's going to help us improve actions and relationships, and it's going to increase our spiritual maturity. I hope that the information that I shared today was insightful for you and helped you to kind of think about where you may be on your maturation process, that growth that you are trying to pursue as you are looking towards a healthier thought life, healthier emotional regulation, and also some spiritual maturity, because that definitely matters into our overall mental and emotional well-being. As mentioned, I will have those resources linked below so that you can click on them for free downloads, and that you can have them to maybe practice, go over, and remember these resources so that you can continue to use them to see good fruit produced in your life, so you can be more effective and purposeful, intentional about how you live your life. If you are interested in learning more about the resources that we use at Genesis Solutions and the services that we offer, again, all that information is linked below, and we will have a plethora of resources available for you so that you can live your most balanced and fruitful life too. All right, I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day and have a great day continuing to grow and learn and be balanced and fruitful. I'll see you soon.